Breaking news is not what we really do here for the Conversation Project, but conversational news is. And we have more details on the incident from this morning in New Orleans, and we can only call it just a tragic incident. But the FBI has actually identified the suspect, the driver of that Ford pickup truck who killed 10 people, 35 numbered as injured, but they don't believe that's the full number. They expect more people to be identified at other hospitals along the way. This happened this morning, 3 a.m. this morning, New Year's Day after the celebrations in New Orleans at Canal at Bourbon Street. The suspect is 42-year-old Shamsud Din Jabbar. In an investigation attack is called an act of terrorism. They believe that he did not act alone. They believe that there is more to this and more is coming on. Now, in response to the events that happened this morning, the driver initially driving into the crowds at Bourbon Street and the fatalities and injuries going on and not knowing exactly what's going on, Sugar Bowl officials have announced a 24-hour postponement of the college football playoff quarterfinal between Georgia and Notre Dame. That means tomorrow night, on the 2nd of January, we will have the game at Caesars Superdome taking place there. And all participants are making sure their safety is there, all people involved, just general public, as people have to figure out what is going on. And as we said, FBI thinks there are more people involved, local folks who actually helped in the situation. They don't have confirmation on who's going on, or at least not telling us. We'll get to that in a moment. But right now, because there's so many questions happening and so many things being involved in larger scale of things, more events coming, they're going to postpone the Sugar Bowl, make sure they're safe for that one, and go forward. Now, New Orleans is the home for this year's Super Bowl. I'm saying that's Sugar Bowl. I'm sorry. Super Bowl. Sugar Bowl will be tomorrow. Super Bowl happening in February. And starting on Monday, the first parades for Mardi Gras, which go into March this year. So there's a lot of activity, and there's a place you want to hit to scare people about possible acts of terror. New Orleans is a pretty hot place right now to do that, with all the activity going on between literally now and the end of March. So people who are going to the game, hold your ticket. Your ticket is fine. Just have to stay an extra day, figure out your combinations for that one going forward. Everything else, pretty much okay. Now, let's get to how we got most of this information. Some of it has been popped out here or there. We knew the name of the individual who did the act a few hours ago, but literally about 10 minutes before I recorded this, they wrapped up a very long, very wild news conference that got postponed from 11 o'clock Central Time, my time, till about 1:30 or so when it started. And it became must-see TV, if you will. It was like watching a Wu-Tang concert where many people were wandering around, bumping into each other, saying things on top of each other, and the actual words that were being said kind of got garbled in the mix of what was going on. We heard from the chief of police, we heard from the mayor, we heard from the FBI agent who's in charge of things. Then we heard from members of various parts of people who are elected to officials that aren't the local folks, including the governor and the Senator John Edwards. I believe he's a senator. I'm not there anymore, so hopefully he's a senator, not a representative, not, shying away to what he is. And they basically, did hit their politician thing, said some things that were kind of off, did their chest puffering and all those things like that were there. And in fact, Edwards got in the way very often of the FBI agent who kept trying to answer actual questions. And then the mayor or the governor kept saying, well, she ain't answering questions. And then she, tried to answer questions. It was a hot mess of a press conference. In fact, watching some of the responses to the people who are in the news covering it, saying, wow, that was a hot mess of a press conference, a bit interesting on the day. What we do know is we're going to get more information as we're allowed to get that. On active investigations, you can't just let everything go, and which is fine. But you also can't be over puffering going forth. Yes, you have to say, we will catch these criminals. Yes, you will say, these are terrorists and we should fight back. Yes, you'll say, we believe there's more people involved. So if you know something, say something. Those things should be said. But you got to be careful who's going on. Now, the politicians, they have to run for government again. So they've got to prove that they're strong. And in a place like Louisiana, where it is, I'll say it very honestly, because I lived there for quite some time, very, very red-ish, and looking for that sort of red meat, we want to get this guy type of stuff. You got to put that stuff on. And in a place where people are probably a bit scared about what could happen, you have to put on that big face of being tough and being really, really rugged on these things. But at some point, you've got to let the people that actually do the work. Edwards admitted up front that he did two things. He contradicted himself in one way. He said he didn't know, no one actually talked to him maybe his staff talked to some folks on the federal level, but the federal level, the president and the FBI and of course the DOD, White House are all working in tandem with this. Of course, this FBI agent on the ground. No one's talked to him, but maybe his staff talked to folks. But he also said that there's some things, questions that won't be answered, which is obvious, and popped up. They told me some things that I'm not telling you guys because I don't want to interfere the investigation. Because there's also that war on the press because the press are, bad or something. So let's be clear. A tragic event happened this morning. 10 people at the moment, as this recording, have died from a man who drove a F-150, I believe, Ford pickup truck onto the sidewalk into a crowd of people on Bourbon Street, across at Bourbon and Canal Street. 10 people died essentially on the scene. 35 people or so are being treated right now, fighting for their lives. And that man's name, the last time I probably will say it, Shamsud Din Jabbar. He is a former military member, honorably discharged. Yes, he seemed to have been carrying a ISIS flag. That thing that popped up in sort of whispers back and forth apparently is a true thing. He seems to have been radicalized and may have some either love for ISIS or attachment to ISIS. We don't know. They are calling this officially an act of terrorism. They're not saying it's a terrorist act. The words are important because terrorist act means someone actually planned this. A lone wolf attack is just somebody trying to scare folks because they're trying to do whatever. We don't know if it's coordinated, but they do believe there's more people involved in this one. And that's what we know that's officially happening right now. If you stuck around this long for the video, you can kind of tell my bit of disdain for the overacting in the press conference. But these things happen, these things. And this is very fresh. And these things happen, these things. And I have my parents and I have family who live near New Orleans. My parents live in Louisiana. This is something that I'll be talking about them, seeing what's going on and see what the locals are saying about this one. And we'll probably give you some of those comments along the line. And we'll definitely have this in the forecast, in the broadcast for tomorrow. It's definitely going to happen. What say you about the press conference, about the horrible activity, about losing a football game for 24 hours and what's going to happen for the next 30 odd days because they've got stuff going on until March with Mardi Gras? Let me know in the comments.